When it comes to ZBCN, I want to explain why I like this. Now, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and even though I'm not telling you to do anything, even though I'm still thinking about 10 cents when it comes to ZBCN, why I like it is ultimately because what I see, what they're planning on doing moving forward when it comes to Zebec's, fundamentals. Because not too long ago, I even made a video on this, but I talked about World Mobile and its partnership when it comes to Zebec. And more specifically, right, we saw World Mobile partnering with Zebec to launch ZebecNet. And what I find pretty interesting is that not only is World Mobile the first global decentralized mobile network, but then at the same time, like over 6 months ago, right, we saw what World Mobile did with PWC and as well as SK Chain. But you know what? I think the real kind of famous one there is PWC. But besides that, if I take a look at PWC, what is that? That's one of the big four accounting firms, or should I say PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? And again, one of the big four accounting firms with SK Chain partnered with World Mobile, and then now World Mobile, supposedly, right, we see the announced kind of partnership with Zebec. That is pretty amazing, in my opinion, because could this maybe bring more eyeballs to something like Zebec? I don't see why not, because I think when people take a look at, okay, PWC, right, they had a partnership with World Mobile, and then something that they partnered with is now partnering with Zebec. That is pretty interesting, in my opinion. And we've seen what Zebec has done with Algorand, which is, in and of itself, if I take a look at as a layer one blockchain, that is very popular and very famous. And I like what I did see there. But then this is also kind of a cherry on top moment for me. And why isn't it talked about as much in my perspective? Well, it's because I don't think we've seen an altcoin season. And also, I think it's because we haven't seen that next leg up when it comes to ZBCN. ZBCN had a really good rally, right? And then there was a pullback. But then ever since then, even though it had a pretty good recovery, it hasn't had that next leg up from there. So to me, I think sometimes, a lot of the stuff that Zebec is doing may be a little bit kind of diluted, where it's not viewed as in the same regard as opposed to maybe back then when the price was doing better. But then I still like it fundamentally, and it doesn't mean that it becoming better fundamentally, the price is going to do better, but then I still like what I'm seeing nonetheless. And also on top of that, if we take a look at Zebec and its Zebec cards, right? People like to say, oh, even meme coins have cards and all this. Well, if we take a look at Bonk, which is such a popular Solana-based meme coin, and we've already kind of seen what the Zebec cards did with that not too long ago. And I think that is a pretty big victory in and of itself because, yeah, sure, Bonk is a meme coin, but still it has a lot of popularity. It's more popular, I think, than Zebec right now, and also on top of that, I think, you know what? Just having more attention when it comes to Zebec is not such a bad thing if, let's say, it did have that. However, to me, when it comes to Zebec, sometimes people take a look at, okay, sure, there's over 200 payroll enterprise clients as of right now, but who cares about payrolls? I think it is still pretty interesting because Zebec is focused on instant payrolls, right? So it's a little bit different than just, regular payrolls, I would say. Instant payrolls, it just brings a little bit more of a, cool touch to it. Not to mention, we take a look at AI-based payment finance. Really nothing that special or that new, but it's still pretty interesting. It's a pretty good addition nonetheless, I think, when it comes to Zebec. And being focused on real-world assets, or should I say RWAs, it is something that is pretty interesting because we've seen the historical kind of performance that Ondo had, right? And Ondo is primarily focused on pretty much RWAs, the way you take a look at it, and we've seen that blueprint work out pretty good historically. Will the same happen to Zebec? Who knows? But it's still pretty cool, in my opinion. And unlike something like Algorand, which has, that aspect of ISO 20022, unlike something like Stellar, unlike something like Ripple, which again has those aspects of ISO 20022 along with XDC, we're still seeing Zebec work towards that sort of compliance, again, that ISO 20022 compliance. The big question is sometimes when is it going to ever achieve that? But to me, who knows, right? But then I still like what I'm seeing nonetheless and how they're still even working towards that. Because we gotta take this into consideration. ISO 20022, it's currently being used by many financial institutions for something called inter-organizational data exchange. Zebec working towards, again, that ISO 20022 compliance, it shows how I think their team is thinking about the right things. And I think it has their priorities in the right areas too. Now, I'm not a part of their team, so I don't know what is really going on in the internals, but it seems like from what I'm seeing from afar, it seems like they seem to be, again, heading it in the right direction, but only time will tell. Now, when I take a look at Zebec as well, people like to tell me, okay, but having a Solana aspect is really nothing that special because there's many projects, let's say, on Solana. There's many other projects out there that have a Solana aspect, let's say. But then, to me, I just still like, Zebec having an aspect of Solana nonetheless because it is an emerging layer 1 blockchain, right? It's pretty mainstream nowadays when it comes to Solana. And sure, Solana is known for a lot of the meme coins, but, other projects too, why not? ZBCN was even top 10 in terms of utility when it comes to Solana not too long ago, so that's pretty impressive. Now, that's in terms of utility, right? But still, I think it's a pretty big victory, even though Solana is known for a lot of the meme coins. Now, when I take a look at Solana as well, Solana Ventures, which is so massive, they didn't have to be a backer when it comes to Zebec, in my opinion, but they are anyways, allegedly, and that is, I think, pretty impressive, considering how a lot of other projects out there are kind of ignored, by Solana Ventures, even despite sometimes being on Solana. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Also, on top of that, when I take a look at something like, Circle, which is the creator of USDC, the stablecoin, that's pretty interesting because they are a backer when it comes to Zebec. So yeah, anyway, take a look at it. Circle, not only are they a backer when it comes to Zebec, they hold a pretty big amount of ZBCN, which I think gives a lot more stability when it comes to ZBCN, which is why I think ZBCN probably hasn't had those major dips in price like what we've seen with a lot of other projects. Now, who knows what Circle is doing with their ZBCN holdings? Again, I'm not a part of their team or something like that. I can only just take a look at from afar. But at least to me, the kind of vibe is that I think because Circle holds a big amount of ZBCN, allegedly, I think it gives a lot more stability as opposed to, let's say, it was all just retail, or let's say it's a bunch of smaller, institutions holding it. Maybe they might sell when the market is not doing good. Who knows, right? Or they just might sell in general for whatever reason. And I think maybe just because Circle doesn't need ZBCN, I don't think they really need it anyways in the grand scheme of things. So probably this holding, which probably doesn't even make any significant amount of their portfolio, they're probably like, okay, has a 20% dip, who cares? I think that's probably the mentality. I mean, if I was like, let's say, the head of Circle, right? And let's say, there's USDC, the stablecoin, which of course that is like so massive. And then I see something like ZBCN out there hiding somewhere, seeing that even dip 50%, I'm like, whatever. Even if that went up like 200%, it's like, whatever. It's not even such a big amount to them. This is the way to take a look at it. So indirectly, I think maybe that somewhat helps Zebec because by having such a major player like that holding such a big amount of ZBCN, I think maybe that does something to it, right? This is my point of view. Now, if I take a look at the idea of 10 cents, which, I get it. Sometimes you're like, oh, are you still thinking about that? Well, it's around a 23x from here, market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply is around 9 billion. It's just not something that seems too ridiculous to me when I consider, again, just the fundamentals of Zebec, when I consider the backers. And also on top of that, around a 23x, it's not going to be the best thing of all time, but I don't think it's going to be the worst either. I don't know if something like XLM could do that in the next 5 months or even XRP, let alone. But, this is my point of view. Not to say that I don't believe in something like XLM, for instance. But then, when it comes to ZBCN, just that doing over 20x from right now, it doesn't seem that outlandish, but who knows, only time will tell. Now, it's also only a time will tell type of scenario for when exactly there's going to be that next leg up when it comes to altcoins. That is beyond my control. But there's only one thing I can do. In case the market does have that next leg up, in case there's an altcoin season, I just want to be prepared by holding and dollar cost averaging, and that's it. So if, let's say, it does do something, maybe hypothetically it's kind of like going along with the ride. But, only time will tell. I'm just going to stay patient, and that's pretty much about it. But I do like Zebec as a project. I'm still staying patient. I'm not telling you to do anything, but this is just my point of view. And I want to say thank you for watching. I greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.